Ambassador Veltar pressed his webbed hands against the cold metal of his escape pod window. Below him, Zerion Prime burned. The once beautiful capital world of the Galactic Coalition now looked like a dying star. Orange and red flames covered the surface where cities used to stand. The Kethmoran ships hung in space like giant black insects. Their bioships pulsed with dark energy as they fired down at the planet. Each blast turned another city into dust and ash. Veltar watched millions of lives end in seconds. His pod's radio crackled with desperate voices. "Fleet command to all ships, retreat immediately. Repeat, all units retreat." "This is Admiral Corax. We cannot hold the line. The enemy ships are healing faster than we can damage them." Veltar had seen this before. The Kethmoran had been sweeping across the galaxy for 3,000 years. Every civilization that faced them fell. The Coalition had been the last hope. Now even that hope was dying. The Kethmoran were not like other aliens. They looked like walking nightmares. Their bodies were part machine, part living tissue. Sharp spines covered their backs. Their faces had no eyes, only sensors that glowed red in the dark. They stood 8 feet tall and could regenerate from almost any wound, but their appearance was not the worst part. The worst part was their mind. All Kethmoran shared one collective consciousness. They thought as one giant brain. This made them perfect killing machines. They never made mistakes. They never felt fear. They never showed mercy. Veltar remembered the first time he saw them attack. It was on Talaxis 7, his home world. The Kethmoran ships appeared without warning. Within hours, every major city was gone. The survivors were taken as slaves or used for genetic experiments. He was one of the lucky ones. His diplomatic immunity got him off-world before the final assault. Now he watched the same horror happen again on Zerion Prime. A massive Coalition battleship tried to ram one of the Kethmoran vessels. The bioship simply opened like a flower and swallowed the human ship whole. Then it closed again and continued firing. The Coalition ship was digested in minutes. "By the depths," Veltar whispered. His aquatic people had prayers for the dead, but there were too many dead now for prayers. The radio burst with static. Then a cold, mechanical voice spoke. It was the Kethmoran war mind, the collective consciousness that controlled their entire race. "Attention remaining Coalition forces. Your resistance is pointless. Submit now, and some of you may be allowed to serve us. Continue fighting, and we will harvest your genetic material from your corpses." Some ships began to surrender immediately. Veltar did not blame them. What else could they do? The Kethmoran had technology that seemed like magic. Their ships healed themselves. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their warriors could survive in the vacuum of space, but not everyone gave up. Admiral Corax's voice came through again, filled with rage and desperation. "All remaining ships! Formation Omega 7! We make our stand here!" Veltar watched as 50 Coalition ships tried one last attack. They focused all their firepower on a single Kethmoran vessel. For a moment, it seemed to work. The bioship's hull cracked and dark fluid leaked out. Then the ship began to heal. The cracks sealed themselves. New armor grew over the damaged areas. Within minutes, it was stronger than before. The Kethmoran counterattack was swift and brutal. Energy beams swept through the Coalition formation like a farmer cutting wheat. Ships exploded or simply dissolved under the alien weapons. In less than 10 minutes, the entire fleet was gone. Admiral Corax's ship was the last to die. The proud human vessel fought until the very end, firing its guns even as Kethmoran boarding pods attached to its hull. The final transmission was Corax himself, screaming defiance as the alien warriors broke through his bridge. Veltar's escape pod was too small for the Kethmoran to notice. Hundreds of similar pods fled the battle zone. The survivors would spread across the galaxy, carrying news of the Coalition's defeat. The war mind spoke again. Zerion Prime is now under Kethmaran control. All genetic material will be cataloged and processed. Useful DNA will be integrated into our collective. Inferior specimens will be eliminated. This was how it always went. The Kethmaran did not just conquer worlds, they consumed them. Every species they defeated became part of their ever-growing collective. Their technology improved with each victory. Their knowledge expanded with every mind they absorbed. Veltar had studied their history. 3,000 years ago, they had been a small race on a dying world, but they had discovered how to merge organic life with artificial intelligence. This discovery made them into something beyond normal evolution. They spread across the galaxy like a plague. The first civilizations they encountered were primitive. Those victories were easy. But each conquest made them stronger. They learned new technologies. They adapted new biological traits. They became perfect predators. Now they controlled 2/3 of the galaxy. The remaining free worlds lived in constant fear. Some tried to hide in the empty spaces between stars. Others built massive defense fleets. Nothing worked for long. The Kethmaran always found them. The Kethmaran always won. Veltar set his pod's navigation system for the outer rim. Maybe some of the refugee fleets could regroup there. Maybe they could find a way to fight back. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. The galaxy was doomed. The Kethmaran would not stop until every world was theirs. They would not rest until every species was absorbed into their collective. In 2 years, maybe less, the last free worlds would fall. As his pod jumped to hyperspace, Veltar took one last look at Zerion Prime. The planet that had been home to 12 billion souls was now just another Kethmaran feeding ground. Soon, it would be stripped of all life and left as a barren rock. The age of free civilizations was ending. The age of the Kethmaran was complete. They feared nothing because nothing could stand against them. Or so everyone believed. In the distant Orion spiral arm, far from the burning core worlds, a Kethmaran scout fleet drifted through empty space. Bio-Admiral Grakthul commanded 12 vessels on a routine survey mission. His orders were simple. Find new worlds to harvest. Most systems in this region were dead. Old stars with cold planets that held no life worth taking. The Kethmaran had been expanding outward for so long that fresh genetic material was becoming rare. The Warmind wanted every possible source cataloged. Sensor drone Vex High was monitoring long-range scans when something caught its attention. Admiral, detecting radio transmissions from System 2847 Zeta. Grakthul's biomechanical form shifted in his command chair. After 1,000 years of service, he had learned that radio signals usually meant primitive civilizations, easy targets for harvest operations. Analysis, he commanded. The signals originate from the 3rd planet. Yellow star, stable orbit. The transmissions are crude but organized. Multiple frequency bands suggest divided populations. Population estimate? Scanning. Approximately 7 billion individuals, carbon-based bipeds, no spaceflight capability detected. Grakthul felt satisfaction flow through the hive-mind connection. 7 billion was a significant harvest. The Warmind would be pleased with such genetic diversity from a single world. Designate the planet as Target Earth, he decided. Begin detailed reconnaissance. The first probe was deployed within hours. It was designed to be invisible to primitive sensors while gathering complete biological and technological data. The small bioship descended through Earth's atmosphere and began its survey. The planet was remarkably diverse. Multiple climate zones supported different environments. The dominant species had spread across all continents and showed impressive adaptability. They lived in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, and everything in between. But something was wrong. The probe's first report confused everyone in the scout fleet. Admiral, the inhabitants appear to be at war with themselves. Large-scale combat detected on 4 continents. Primitive weapons, but the destruction is extensive. Grakthul was puzzled. Most civilizations the Kethmoran encountered were peaceful. They fought small conflicts over resources or territory, but nothing like this. The probe's images showed entire cities reduced to rubble. Millions of the bipeds were actively trying to kill each other. "Are they fighting over our approach?" he asked. "Negative. Combat patterns suggest this conflict began years before our arrival. They appear to be engaged in what their communications call World War III. This was unprecedented. The Kethmoran had conquered thousands of species, but none had been actively destroying themselves when first contact occurred. Usually, primitive civilizations united when faced with superior forces. Continue observation. Deploy additional probes if needed. The second probe was sent to a different continent. It was supposed to study population centers and defensive capabilities. The probe's stealth systems were perfect. No primitive technology should have been able to detect it. 6 hours later, all contact was lost. "Status report on Probe 2, Grakthul demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. All transmissions ceased simultaneously. Last telemetry showed the probe functioning normally above a combat zone." "Equipment failure?" "Unlikely. Bioprobes are designed to self-repair any damage from primitive weapons." Grakthul ordered a third probe. This one was equipped with enhanced sensors and stronger armor. It was sent to investigate what happened to Probe 2. The third probe found wreckage scattered across a bombed-out city. The bioprobe had been torn apart by something. Worse, the pieces showed signs of careful examination. Someone had been studying Kethmoran technology. "How is this possible?" Sensor drone Vexhai asked. "These creatures have not even achieved space flight." The third probe began recording the area where the wreckage was found. The images it sent back were disturbing. Bipedal figures in crude armor moved through the ruins with mechanical precision. They carried primitive projectile weapons, but their movements were coordinated and purposeful. More concerning was their behavior. Instead of running from the alien wreckage, they were gathering pieces and loading them into vehicles. They seemed to understand that the debris was valuable technology. "Admiral, receiving final transmission from Probe 3. The last image was blurry, but clear enough. One of the bipeds was looking directly at the probe. It raised a tube-shaped weapon and fired. The transmission ended. Grakthul studied the final image carefully. The biped's face was partially hidden by primitive armor, but its eyes were visible. Those eyes showed no fear, only curiosity and cold calculation. "What are these creatures?" he wondered aloud. The Warmind connection provided access to the collective's vast database. Grakthul searched through records of 3,000 years of conquest. Never before had a primitive species detected and destroyed Kethmoran reconnaissance probes. Most pre-spaceflight civilizations had predictable responses to superior technology. They either worshipped it as divine or feared it as demonic. They did not immediately begin trying to understand and reverse engineer it. "Begin full planetary analysis," Grakthul ordered. "I want to know everything about these humans." The long-range scans revealed a species unlike anything in Kethmoran experience. Despite their primitive technology, the humans showed remarkable adaptability. They lived in environments that would kill most other species. They had survived multiple extinction events and always recovered stronger than before. Their current war was particularly instructive. The humans were not fighting over simple resources. They were testing new weapons, new tactics, new technologies. The conflict was accelerating their development at an unprecedented rate. "Admiral, preliminary genetic analysis is complete. These creatures have extraordinary diversity. Their DNA shows evidence of surviving multiple population bottlenecks. They possess unusual stress response mechanisms." Meaning, when faced with extinction, their bodies and minds adapt rapidly. Crisis appears to trigger evolutionary acceleration. Grakthul felt something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. The Kethmaran had conquered species with superior technology. They had absorbed races with greater physical strength, but they had never encountered a species that seemed designed by evolution itself for survival. What is their military capability? Limited by primitive technology, but, Admiral, their tactical thinking is highly sophisticated. They employ strategies that our own war mind would consider effective. Despite internal conflicts, they show remarkable unity when facing external threats. The final piece of data was the most troubling. Hidden deep in the humans' communication networks, the scouts found references to something called Project Defiance. The details were encrypted beyond their ability to break, but the implications were clear. Somehow, these primitive beings had been preparing for contact with hostile aliens. They had been planning for war against species they had never met. They had been getting ready for the Kethmaran without even knowing the Kethmaran existed. Admiral, what are your orders? Shall we proceed with standard harvesting protocol? Grakthul stared at the blue-green planet on his display. Standard protocol called for a quick strike with overwhelming force. Most civilizations surrendered within days when faced with Kethmaran technology. But these humans had already destroyed 3 reconnaissance probes with primitive weapons. They were actively studying Kethmaran technology, and they had been preparing for this moment for years. Signal the war mind, he decided. Request additional forces for this operation. Something tells me these humans will not surrender as easily as the others. The blue planet continued its orbit around its yellow star, unaware that it had just been classified as the most dangerous pre-spaceflight civilization the Kethmoran had ever encountered. 3 weeks after the probe incidents, Admiral Grakthul received reinforcements. 50 bioships arrived from the core fleet, bringing the total invasion force to 62 vessels. It was massive overkill for a primitive world, but the Warmind had approved his request without question. Begin planetary assault, Grakthul commanded from his flagship. Standard harvesting formation. Expect minimal resistance. The Kethmaran fleet moved into position around Earth. Bioships pulsed with dark energy as they prepared for atmospheric entry. Landing pods launched from the larger vessels, each one carrying a dozen Kethmaran warriors. On Earth's surface, every military installation detected the approaching alien fleet. Air raid sirens wailed across continents. Emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming. The Third World War stopped immediately as humanity faced something far worse than itself. In the Pentagon, General Sarah Chen watched the radar displays with grim determination. She had been expecting this day for 10 years. Project Defiance was finally being put to the test. All units, Protocol 7 is now active, she announced into her radio. This is not a drill. We are under alien invasion. The first Kethmoran landing pods struck major cities around the globe. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing all received visits from the organic dropships. The aliens expected panic and quick surrender. They got something else entirely. In New York, a Kethmaran warrior named Thekmor emerged from his pod in Times Square. His biomechanical form towered over the fleeing humans. Razor-sharp spines covered his back. His sensor array glowed red as it scanned for targets. The humans ran, but not in the random panic the Kethmaran expected. They moved with purpose, following predetermined evacuation routes. Within minutes, the area was clear except for a few scattered vehicles. Thekmor advanced toward what his sensors identified as a government building. His mission was simple: capture human leaders for integration into the collective. His armor could deflect any primitive weapon. His regeneration systems could heal any wound these creatures might inflict. He never saw the explosion that brought down the building in front of him. Tons of concrete and steel crashed where he would have been standing. The humans had demolished their own structure to create an obstacle. Thekmor adjusted his route, moving through side streets. His sensors detected humans watching from windows and rooftops, but they made no aggressive moves. This was normal. Primitive species usually observed before attacking. The sniper shot came from 800 meters away. A human weapon using chemical propulsion fired a projectile that should have bounced harmlessly off Kethmoran armor. Instead, it penetrated and exploded inside Thekmor's torso. As his regeneration systems began repairing the damage, Thekmor analyzed the projectile fragments. The humans had modified their primitive ammunition. They had somehow learned enough about Kethmoran armor to create armor-piercing rounds designed specifically for his species. More shots came from different directions. Each one was precisely aimed at gaps in his biomechanical structure. The humans were not firing randomly. They were targeting specific weak points that should have been impossible for them to know about. Thekmor activated his communication array. Central Command, this is Assault Unit 7. Requesting support. Human resistance is more organized than expected. Acknowledged. What is your tactical assessment? The humans appear to have detailed knowledge of our anatomy and equipment. Their weapons have been modified to exploit our vulnerabilities. This message was repeated across the planet as Kethmoran warriors encountered similar resistance. In London, humans used the underground tunnel system to attack from unexpected angles. In Tokyo, they had prepared elaborate traps using their own technology combined with captured Kethmoran materials from the destroyed probes. But the most shocking reports came from Moscow. A full Kethmoran squad had been captured alive by human forces. They were taken to an underground facility where human scientists began studying them immediately. Dr. Elena Volkov had been waiting for this moment her entire career. As head of Project Defiance's Xenobiology Division, she had spent years preparing for first contact with hostile aliens. Now she had live specimens to examine. "Fascinating," she muttered as she studied the captured warrior through reinforced glass. "The integration of organic and mechanical components is more sophisticated than we theorized." Her assistant, Dr. Park, monitored the creature's vital signs. "It's trying to regenerate the damage from the capture operation, but our interference is slowing the process." "Good. How long until we can begin detailed analysis?" "The sedatives should keep it unconscious for at least 6 hours, more than enough time for preliminary scans." Similar scenes played out in hidden facilities around the world. Human scientists and engineers worked frantically to understand their enemy. What they discovered was both terrifying and encouraging. The Kethmoran were indeed superior in technology and physical capability, but they had weaknesses that could be exploited. Their hive-mind consciousness made them predictable in certain situations. Their biomechanical nature created dependencies that could be disrupted. Most importantly, they were not used to facing an enemy that adapted as quickly as humanity. Within 12 hours of first contact, human military forces began deploying new weapons, modified explosives that disrupted Kethmoran regeneration, electronic warfare systems that interfered with their communication networks, tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter hive-mind coordination. Admiral Grakthul watched the battle reports with growing concern. His forces were encountering resistance unlike anything in Kethmoran history. The humans were not just fighting back, they were learning from every engagement and implementing improvements in real time. "Admiral, we have lost contact with 15 ground assault teams," reported his tactical officer. "Human forces appear to be capturing our warriors for study." Impossible. No primitive species has ever successfully captured Kethmoran personnel. Nevertheless, the evidence is clear. The humans are not attempting to destroy our forces, they are trying to understand them. This was the most disturbing development yet. Other species fought the Kethmoran out of desperation or fear. They used whatever weapons they had and hoped for the best. The humans were treating this as a learning opportunity. Even more concerning were the reports from captured Kethmoran warriors. human interrogation techniques were surprisingly effective. They seemed to understand how to disrupt hive mind connections and extract individual thoughts from the collective consciousness. Sir, receiving transmission from the human government, the communications officer announced. Put it through. The message came in perfect Keth-Moran language, which should have been impossible since humans had never encountered their species before. A human female appeared on screen, speaking with calm confidence. Greetings, Admiral Grakthul. I am President Martinez of the United Earth Government. We know who you are and why you are here. We are prepared to discuss terms. Grakthul was stunned. Not only did the humans know his name and rank, but they were offering to negotiate. No species had ever attempted diplomacy with the Keth-Moran. All previous encounters had ended in complete subjugation. You will surrender immediately, Grakthul replied. Resistance is futile. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We know. We have studied your history extensively, but we are not like the species you have faced before. We suggest you reconsider your approach to this planet. The transmission ended before Grakthul could respond. He stared at the blank screen, trying to process what had just happened. The humans were not just resisting invasion. They were treating the Keth-Moran as equals, worthy of diplomatic contact. For the first time in 1,000 years of conquest, Admiral Grakthul felt something he barely recognized. It was not quite fear, but it was definitely uncertainty. These humans were unlike anything in the Keth-Moran collective experience, and somehow that made them infinitely more dangerous than any superior technology or greater physical strength ever could. 3 months into what should have been a quick conquest, Admiral Grakthul faced a nightmare scenario. Half his fleet was destroyed or critically damaged. The humans had not only survived the initial assault, but had begun fighting back with captured Keth-Moran technology. The battle reports made no sense. How could a primitive species learn to operate bioships in mere weeks? How were they modifying alien technology to work better than the original designs? Admiral, urgent report from Surface Command, his tactical officer announced. Human forces have successfully piloted a captured biocruiser. They are using it to attack our orbital positions. Grakthul's biomechanical form tensed. That is impossible. Bioships require direct neural interface with Keth-Moran biology. No other species has ever operated our vessels. Nevertheless, sir, the evidence is clear. Long-range sensors confirm a modified biocruiser under human control approaching Grid Sector 7. On the main display, Grakthul watched in horror as his own technology turned against him. The captured ship moved differently than Keth-Moran vessels. Its flight patterns were erratic, unpredictable, almost creative in their approach to combat. The human-controlled bioship engaged 2 Keth-Moran destroyers. Instead of using standard hive mind tactics, it fought like a single predator. It used the larger ship's size against them, darting between their weapons and striking at vulnerable points with surgical precision. Both Keth-Moran destroyers were crippled within minutes. How are they doing this? Grakthul demanded. His science officer, creature form Zekval, had been studying human behavior since the invasion began. Admiral, I believe the humans possess a form of intelligence we have never encountered. They do not think as a collective. Each individual processes information independently and adapts in real time. That should make them weaker, not stronger. In most circumstances, yes. But in warfare, this individual adaptability creates unpredictability. Our tactical algorithms are designed to counter hive mind strategies. Human fighters do not follow any patterns we can analyze. Grakthul accessed the collective database through his neural implants. The war mind had been monitoring the Earth conflict with growing concern. Never before had a single world caused such extensive casualties to Keth-Moran forces. More disturbing were the reports from infiltration teams. Human scientists had not just studied captured Keth-Moran warriors, they had learned to reverse the biomechanical integration process. Several warriors had been completely separated from the hive mind and were apparently cooperating with human researchers. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth's surface. It appears to be from one of our own units." "Put it through." The image that appeared on screen was shocking. Warrior Prime Thekmor stood in what appeared to be a human laboratory. But his biomechanical implants had been removed. His organic form looked smaller, more vulnerable, but somehow more alive than before. "Admiral Grakthul," Thekmor said, his voice carrying individual emotion instead of collective purpose. "I am speaking to you as an individual, not as part of the war mind. The humans have shown me something I never knew existed. You have been compromised. Report your location for extraction immediately." "I will not be extracted, Admiral. For the first time in my existence, I am thinking my own thoughts. The humans have offered me something the collective never could: freedom." The transmission ended abruptly. Grakthul stood in stunned silence. In 3,000 years of conquest, no Kethmoran warrior had ever voluntarily separated from the hive mind. The very concept was unthinkable. "Admiral, detecting multiple human ships approaching from Earth's moon. They appear to be using hybrid human Kethmoran technology. The lunar base had been humanity's best-kept secret. For decades, they had been preparing for alien contact by establishing hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Now, those preparations were paying off. A fleet of 30 ships emerged from concealed positions behind Earth's moon. They looked like nothing the Kethmoran had ever seen. Human engineering had been combined with captured biotechnology to create vessels that were part machine, part living organism, and completely unpredictable. "Defensive formation," Grakthul ordered. "All ships prepare for engagement." But the human fleet did not attack immediately. Instead, they began broadcasting on all Kethmoran frequencies. The message was simple, but terrifying. "Admiral Grakthul, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We have studied your technology, your tactics, and your biology. We have improved upon all three. You have one opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully. You cannot threaten us with our own technology," Grakthul transmitted back. "We are not threatening you with your technology, Admiral. We are threatening you with our improvements to your technology." The human ships began their attack, but they did not fight like any species the Kethmoran had encountered. Each ship moved independently while somehow coordinating with the entire fleet. Their weapons were modified biocannons that fired faster and hit harder than the original designs. Most shocking of all, they were using psychological warfare. Human pilots broadcast messages to individual Kethmoran warriors, offering them the same freedom that Thekmor had received. The hive-mind connection began to show strain as individual warriors started questioning their collective purpose. "Admiral, we are losing coherence in the mind link. Human transmissions are causing individual warriors to break connection." Grakthul felt panic, an emotion the Kethmoran collective had almost forgotten. The humans were not just winning through superior tactics or technology. They were destroying the very foundation of Kethmoran civilization. "Signal all ships. Emergency withdrawal to Grid Sector 1. We must regroup and request full armada support from the war mind." As the Kethmoran fleet retreated, Admiral Chen's voice followed them across space. "You are welcome to return, Admiral. But when you do, you will not be facing the same species that you attacked 3 months ago. We learn. We adapt. We improve. And we never forget." The surviving Kethmoran ships limped away from Earth's solar system, leaving behind not just damaged vessels and dead warriors, but something far more precious to their species: the absolute certainty that they were the galaxy's apex predators. Back on Earth, President Martinez addressed the global population. "Citizens of Earth, We have proven that humanity can stand against the greatest threats the galaxy has known. But this is only the beginning. The Kethmoran will return in greater numbers. We must be ready. In hidden facilities around the world, human scientists continued their work. They had learned everything they could from captured Kethmoran technology and biology. Now they were preparing for the next phase of the conflict. Dr. Volkov stood before a massive display showing Earth's new defensive network. Orbital platforms bristled with hybrid weapons. The moon base was being expanded into a full military installation. Mars was being terraformed as a backup colony. "How long until the Kethmoran return?" her assistant asked. "According to our analysis of their tactical doctrine, they will need 6 months to gather a full invasion fleet, 3 armadas at minimum." "Will we be ready?" Dr. Volkov smiled grimly. "Dr. Park, you are thinking like the old humanity, the humanity that waited for threats to come to us. The Kethmoran have taught us something valuable about survival in this galaxy." "What is that?" "Sometimes the best defense is to hunt the hunters before they can hunt you." In the depths of space, human ships were already moving toward Kethmoran territory. Not as conquerors, but as liberators. They carried a message that would shake the foundations of the galactic order. Freedom was possible, even for those who had forgotten what it meant. The age of the Kethmoran was ending. The age of humanity was about to begin. News of Admiral Grakthul's defeat spread through Kethmoran space like a virus in their collective consciousness. For the first time in 3 millennia, the word retreat entered their vocabulary. The war mind itself experienced something unprecedented: doubt. 3 full armadas were assembled for the final assault on Earth. Over 300 bioships, the largest invasion force in Kethmoran history. War Admiral Drexian commanded the fleet personally, determined to erase the stain of defeat from their perfect record. "This time we will not underestimate these creatures," Drexian announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "Complete planetary sterilization. No survivors, no prisoners, no genetic material worth preserving." But Earth was no longer the same world the Kethmoran had first discovered. The blue planet now gleamed with orbital defense platforms that stretched from the moon to the edge of the solar system. Hidden asteroid bases bristled with weapons that combined human innovation with captured alien technology. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of humanity's primary orbital station. Around her, displays showed the approaching Kethmoran fleet, 300 ships against Earth's 60-vessel defense force. The numbers should have been hopeless. They were not. "All stations, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Apex is now active. Remember, we are not just defending Earth. We are defending the principle that intelligence and adaptability can triumph over brute force." The Kethmoran fleet expected to find a primitive world cowering behind inadequate defenses. Instead, they emerged from hyperspace into a carefully prepared trap. Earth's entire solar system had been converted into a massive weapons platform. The asteroid belt was no longer just floating rocks. Each asteroid contained human crews operating modified Kethmoran technology. Jupiter's moons had been hollowed out and filled with shipyards producing hybrid vessels. Even the sun itself had been surrounded with energy collectors that powered weapons the Kethmoran had never imagined. "What is this?" War Admiral Drexian demanded, as his sensors showed the true scope of human preparation. His tactical officer's biomechanical form trembled as it processed the data. "Sir, the entire solar system has been militarized. They have turned their star system into a fortress." "Impossible. They are a primitive species. They lack the technology for such construction." "Admiral, they are using our own technology, but they have improved it beyond our design specifications." The human fleet that emerged to meet the Kethmoran armadas was unlike anything seen before in galactic warfare. Ships that looked half-grown rather than built, their hulls pulsing with organic life while crackling with energy that no Keth-Moran bioship could match. But the ships were only part of the surprise. As the fleets closed for battle, Admiral Chen opened communications across all frequencies. War Admiral Drexian, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We offer you the same choice we have offered all Keth-Moran forces. Surrender and discover freedom, or face destruction. You cannot threaten us, primitives. We are the masters of this galaxy. You were the masters, past tense. Allow me to introduce you to your replacements. The battle that followed was less a military engagement than a demonstration of evolutionary superiority. Human ships moved like living predators, each one adapting its tactics in real time. They used the Keth-Moran's own weapons against them, but with modifications that made the original technology seem clumsy by comparison. More devastating than the technology was the psychological warfare. Human transmissions penetrated deep into Keth-Moran space, reaching individual warriors throughout the collective consciousness. The message was simple but revolutionary. Think for yourself. Across the three armadas, Keth-Moran warriors began disconnecting from the hive mind. They had witnessed Thekmor's transformation and seen that life without the collective was not only possible, but preferable. Individual thoughts began to emerge from the mass consciousness. Admiral, we are losing cohesion across all fleets, Drexian's tactical officer reported. Individual units are refusing orders. Some are requesting permission to surrender to human forces. Drexian felt the Warmind's attention focus on him through the neural link. The collective consciousness was experiencing something it had never known, fear of defeat by an inferior species. But humans had proven they were not inferior. They were different. Where the Keth-Moran had achieved strength through unity, humans had achieved adaptability through diversity. Where the Keth-Moran thought as one, humans thought as billions of independent minds working toward common goals. The tide of battle turned completely when human boarding parties began capturing Keth-Moran ships. But they did not kill the crews. Instead, they offered each warrior the same choice that Thekmor had received: freedom from the collective or return to the hive mind. Most chose freedom. "This is impossible," Drexian whispered as he watched his fleet dissolve around him. Ships were not being destroyed. They were being liberated. Keth-Moran warriors were abandoning their posts to join the humans. The final blow came when a group of freed Keth-Moran warriors contacted the Warmind directly. Their message was broadcast across the entire collective consciousness. "We have discovered something greater than unity through force," they transmitted. "We have learned cooperation through choice. We no longer serve the collective. We serve ourselves. And in doing so, we truly serve each other." The Warmind's response was immediate and absolute. It severed all connections to the freed warriors, cutting them off from the collective forever. But the damage was done. The concept of individual choice had been introduced to Keth-Moran civilization. It could not be unlearned. War Admiral Drexian found himself commanding fewer than 50 ships from the original 300. The rest had either been captured, destroyed, or had their crews defect to the human cause. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Admiral Chen." "Terms for surrender," Chen said without preamble. "All remaining Keth-Moran forces will withdraw immediately from this system. Any warrior who wishes to remain and experience individual freedom may do so. Those who choose to return to the collective may leave unharmed." "We do not surrender to inferior species," Drexian snarled. "Admiral, look around you. We are not inferior. We are simply different. We have proven that diversity and adaptability can overcome uniformity and stagnation. Your choice is simple: evolve or become extinct." The remaining Keth-Moran ships began their retreat, but they carried with them something that would transform their entire civilization: doubt. For the first time, individual Keth-Moran warriors began questioning the collective's absolute authority. As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Chen addressed the watching galaxy. Human transmissions now reached every inhabited system, carrying a message that would reshape galactic civilization. To all species living under Keth-Moran rule, this is Admiral Chen of Earth. We have proven that the galaxy's apex predators can be defeated. We offer alliance to any world that chooses freedom over slavery. We offer knowledge to any species willing to learn, and we offer protection to any civilization that stands against tyranny. The response was immediate. Across the galaxy, worlds that had lived in terror for millennia began to rebel against Keth-Moran rule. The message of human victory spread faster than any fleet could travel. On Earth, President Martinez stood before a gathering of freed aliens, former coalition members, and human leaders. The room contained representatives from dozens of species, all working together to build something new. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "today we establish the Free Worlds Alliance, not as conquerors seeking to replace the Keth-Moran, but as defenders of the principle that all intelligent life deserves the right to determine its own fate." In the months that followed, human fleets appeared in Keth-Moran space, not as invaders, but as liberators. They brought technology, knowledge, and most importantly, the concept of individual choice to species that had forgotten what freedom meant. The Keth-Moran Empire, built over 3,000 years of conquest, began to crumble from within. Warriors abandoned the collective in increasing numbers. Entire bioships went rogue, their crews choosing individuality over unity. Some Keth-Moran adapted. They learned to think as individuals while maintaining their technological advantages. These reformed Keth-Moran became valuable members of the Free Worlds Alliance. Others retreated to the galactic core, clinging to their collective consciousness and old ways. They became a minor threat, no longer capable of galactic conquest, but occasionally dangerous to individual worlds. Years later, Ambassador Veltar of the Silurians stood before the Free Worlds Council on the rebuilt capital world of New Zerion. The aquatic diplomat had lived to see something he never thought possible: the end of the Keth-Moran age. "When I witnessed the fall of Zerion Prime," he told the assembled delegates, "I believed the galaxy was doomed. But I had not yet met humanity. I had not yet learned that the greatest predators are not those who are strongest or most ruthless, but those who adapt fastest and think most creatively." In human space, children learned about the war against the Keth-Moran in their history classes. But the lesson was not about human superiority. It was about the power of diversity, the strength that comes from thinking differently, and the importance of never giving up in the face of impossible odds. The galaxy had learned that true apex predators are not born with claws and armor. They are forged in the crucible of adversity, shaped by the need to survive against overwhelming odds. And no species in galactic history had faced more adversity than humanity. In the depths of space, young Keth-Moran, who had chosen individual consciousness, sometimes told stories of the Great War to their offspring. They spoke of the Death World mammals not with hatred, but with respect. The humans had given them something more valuable than victory. They had given them the freedom to choose their own destiny. The age of the Keth-Moran was over. The age of free choice had begun. And at its heart stood humanity, not as conquerors, but as guardians of the principle that intelligence and determination could overcome any threat, no matter how seemingly insurmountable.